There's a particular kind of hush, one that hums, pregnant and potent, just before a whisper becomes thunder. That hush, that moment, belongs to Nicholas Galitzine. Back then he was not yet Nicholas. He was a boy navigating the fractured architecture of heritages, royal blood muted by exile, a Greek legacy marooned in London, a childhood spent searching for resonance. Picture a stone-walled room in Hammersmith. A father stands beside a faded photograph of a snow-white palace in Russia, the architecture distant, majestic. Beside him, a mother hums a melody in Greek. The memory of exile is quiet, portentous. It seeps into Nicholas, the weight of expectation, the ache of stories untold. By daylight he was a kid with scraped knees, a sports-injured wrist, a voice cramped by shyness. But when the sun faded, he'd clasp an old guitar, his voice trembling like leaf edges in wind, pouring the day's fear into chords. He never planned to perform. He didn't need to. Every passage of silence in his life was a stage, every unsaid confession, a curtain waiting to rise. Born on September 29, 1994, Nicholas Dmitry Konstantin Galitzine. His name's a tapestry of heritage, entered the world amid the echoes of ancestors far removed from modernity's reach. His father, Geoffrey Leo Alexander, carried through DNA the faint patina of imperial Russian nobility, though the glory had long slipped into myth. His mother, Laura Maria Konstantina Papayani, embodied the quiet warmth of Greek coastal towns, of sun-baked stones and stories told in late-night Sinatra hums. He spent childhood summers trying to translate family secrets, tired of sterile lineage charts. The family conversation cared less for royal privileges and more for stories lost in war. Nicholas's sister, 2 years his senior, was where he saw the flame of artistry alive. She painted whispers of sunsets and half-remembered dreams. But he chased the ball down the rugby pitch, until the body betrayed him. A concussion that fractured more than confidence, a torn rotator cuff, weeks of endless silence. In that silence, through the shell shock of failure, an unexpected inhabitant grew within, the actor-to-be. He never meant to audition. He was the quiet stagehand in Spring Awakening at the Edinburgh Fringe, the one who handed props. But a friend, her eyes luminous, gestured urgently from offstage with a script, a dare, a thrill. He shook, obeyed, read. He was so bleedingly unprepared he wasn't sure if people would laugh or cry. And then something unimaginable happened. They cast him. In the days that followed, his reality rewrote itself. I had never acted, he later confessed. Then 2 months later I was leading a film. The leap was dizzying, belated acclaim wrapped in disruptively unchecked adrenaline. He scrambled to catch up, less rehearsed, more vulnerable. He found that weakness could be his finest armor. The tremor in his throat, the rawness in his eyes, the stutter in a word, these became his signature. Slowly the roles came. Handsome Devil, 2016, a fraught, quiet high school drama in which he played a closeted star quarterback. High Strung, the romance of ballet and violin, strings pulled taut. The Craft, Legacy, where he manufactured teenage power with supernatural frisson. Each was a prism refracting facets of boyhood, shame, yearning, rebellion, desire. Then came Cinderella, 2021. Not just another fairy tale, but a full-blown musical with glittering costumes and a soundtrack suffused with romantic ache. As Prince Robert, he didn't just deliver lines, he inhaled lyrics and exhaled melody. His voice, once stuttering in rehearsal rooms, now roamed theaters and headphones. He sang, not melodically flawless, but laden with earnest longing that translated directly into hearts. The world took notice. Headlines called him a breakout romantic lead. Fans on TikTok used his songs as reactions to heartbreak, joy, daydreams. They latched onto his voice the way moths circle faint candlelight. Then Purple Hearts, 2022, arrived. In it, Nicholas played Luke Morrow, an army vet with tattoos like barcodes, opposite Sophia Carson's Cassie, an aspiring singer shackled by bills. Their love story? Volcanic. It unfolded against the backdrop of medical debt, military tension, creative aspiration, all against the bleakness of California's desert night. Nicholas found himself saying lines he didn't just memorize, but embodied, about fear, duty, sacrifice, grief. The film exploded on Netflix, tens of millions watched in its first month. Critics labeled it a phenomenon, social media users called it their personal love anthem. Every evening he'd float through the empty streets after shooting, trying to exhale his character without losing himself. He discovered grief isn't only played, it's carried. And he carried it like a drifted weight between each cut. Bottoms, 2023, was a different plane entirely. A sapphic teen comedy starring him as a quarterback scheming to start a girl fight club to get close to two lesbian girls. His character, Jeff, was unhinged, absurdly earnest, and delivered lines sharper than glass shards. Filming was chaotic. One day he was drenched in fake blood, the next swarmed by bugs and sweat in a Louisiana sun. He and co-stars dwelled in laughter that sounded like therapy. Yet under the brim shot jokes, he'd wake in dark hours thinking, how far am I from being seen as real and not just a punchline or pretty face? This was The Earthquake, Red, White and Royal Blue, 2023. He played Prince Henry, a future king torn between duty and raw self, opposite Taylor Zahar Perez's Alex. The chemistry? Chemical kinetic. The scenes between them weren't scripted. They became scenes born in the white heat of connection. For the first time, Nicholas watched himself become something entirely larger than roles. He felt people speaking to him, through him, about queer longing, identity, sacrifice. He became, unintentionally, a figurehead for young royals and closeted hearts alike. Articles calling him OTT's breakout anthem arrived. Critics wrote about sincere majesty in his portrayal. A global fandom sprouted. He called it surreal. He, the shy London kid who got on board by happenstance, was thrust into global rotation. The more the industry chased his image, the more he recoiled. Fashion brands wanted him. Fendi offered ambassador contracts. Emporio Armani wanted him for fragrance campaigns. He posed, flawless, yet behind the lens he felt sliced in halves. One part dazzling khaki, the other hollow sound of applause beyond the camera walls. He dreaded being in perfect lighting. He worried they would like him only for his face, only for what he could sell. He fought, daily, for the right to be taken seriously, to dig deeper, to show his messy pulse beneath the veneer. Every interview contained a tension. He'd slip, almost fatalistically, into jokes or flirtatious smiles. Then he'd retreat her into steel-edged calm. His PR agency called it enigmatic. He called it wearing a mask so convincing even I forget I'm wearing it. And so, Nicholas Galitzine stood on a strange summit, a place not earned by war or schemed ascent, but stumbled into by a boy who once tiptoed through his school choir and never meant to be seen. Now the world watched his every breath. He could no longer walk into a coffee shop unnoticed, no longer fall into a role without 1,000 projections sewn to his skin. Yet with every new milestone, every film that placed him on the cultural altar, there was a strange ache forming in his chest. Not grief, not quite anxiety, but something colder. It was the fear of being frozen in an image. The sensation that the industry had not so much welcomed him, but caged him in golden glass. He was beginning to understand what it meant to become mythology before becoming a man. You see, it's easy to adore Nicholas Galitzine. He sings with a tremor in his voice, as if each note was a confession. He acts with eyes that seem to have known loss since boyhood. He kisses like someone remembering a goodbye. But it's in these details, so subtle, so devastating, that he becomes dangerous to the heart. You don't just watch him, you fall into him. And maybe, if you're not careful, you lose something of yourself in the process. That is why you can't turn away. Because Nicholas isn't simply a figure on your screen. He is the breath you held in at the climax of Purple Hearts, the pulse that skipped when Prince Henry whispered, "I love you." He's the shadow of every boy you ever loved too late, the echo of every goodbye you didn't see coming. And yet, despite all this poetic weight, he remains startlingly, painfully real, navigating stardom with one foot always in the past, in some childhood garden where the lights were dim and the applause hadn't begun yet. And still, his story is far from over. There's more beneath the surface, far more than the press releases and fan edits reveal. His mother's lineage traces back not just to a Greek village, but to a long-lost book of family memoirs, written in a dialect that nearly died out with the war. Those memoirs, filled with forbidden love letters and refugee poetry, shaped Nicholas more than any screenplay ever could. They taught him to live in between cultures, in between languages, in between roles. His sister, Lexi, the quiet artist, remains the only person who paints him as he truly is. Her exhibitions are few, often anonymous, yet collectors whisper that her most haunting work is a portrait simply titled "Boy Looking Backward." It is Nicholas. Or at least, the version of him no camera has ever truly caught. And behind the love stories that his fans obsess over, there lies his own, quieter, older, never publicly named. A formative heartbreak with someone who once understood him without questions. The kind of love that never made it to Instagram. He's spoken around it in interviews but never through it. It lingers in his silences, in the way he sometimes sighs before answering a question he's answered 100 times. Fame taught him how to smile through pain. Heartbreak taught him what kind of man he'd never be again. Even now, with the buzz around his next major role, He-Man and Masters of the Universe, there's a storm behind his eyes. The transformation for the role isn't just physical, it's spiritual. He's had to train for months, sculpting his body into a living myth, all while privately battling a quieter demon, the fear of becoming the Mask. Of losing the sensitive boy who wrote poems in the margins of scripts, who never meant to be famous, only heard. And if you listen closely, you'll hear that boy in the pauses between interviews. You'll catch him in the way Nicholas looks away when someone compliments his looks, like he still doesn't quite believe they're speaking to him. You'll see him when he laughs too hard at something small, grateful just to feel like someone ordinary. This, perhaps, is the most captivating thing about Nicholas Galitzine. Not the roles, not the crown, not the scripts waiting to be greenlit. It's the battle he quietly wages against the machinery of stardom, the daily decision to remain real, soft, open, in a world that rewards only polish. He is still becoming, still breaking, still blooming. And you are here at the most pivotal point in his story, the moment just before the next transformation. Not into royalty, not into an action hero, but into the truest version of himself, one that no script could ever contain. So stay close, because the next part of this story isn't about watching him shine. It's about watching him burn through the illusions and step, finally, into the light that was always waiting for him. So who is Nicholas Galitzine? When the cameras stop rolling,